Hello, family. I'm Janaya Future Khan, and this is Dark Woke. Just before we hit it, I want to say thank you to all the listeners out there, and a special shout out to the supporters who make this show possible. It truly means the world to me. If you'd like to become a member, our Patreon is linked in the episode right up below. Hello, babies. We have one stacked episode, but it's not going to be like some of the others. This one demands current events. After seeing what happened to 37-year-old Alex Pretti, I want to open up with a statement from one of his nursing students. As you know, 37-year-old Pretti, a VA nurse, was murdered in cold blood by ICE. We watched the news and the Trump administration do what they do. They presented a bunch of fictions as facts. Just straight up propaganda, just lies. Use the fact that he was a lawful carrying citizen to justify murdering him, despite what we all saw with our own eyes, very similar to that of Renee Good. But there have been some developments related to ICE as a result of your work, the work of the people in Minneapolis, the work of people all over the country, that matter a lot. And then you're going to hear one heck of a rant that started out with an egg video that I have not been able to shake, that actually matters a lot in this moment. I'm so proud of you for surviving last week's last episode, though, because when I sat down and thought about it, I was like, maybe I should just eat pizzas. Because what are those? Look at what those carbs did. That's all I should eat. I don't think I've been eating enough pizzas. But before we jump in, I just wanted to give you one quick hit because there was something that just irritated the shit out of me. Why when we're dealing with fascism, am I watching some random man with zero body fat percentage climbing up a wall in Taiwan? What is happening? Why am I watching a man raw dog a building named Alex, what is it, Honnold? Listen, please, and I don't want to make small his little accomplishment, but are we all not scaling a wall right now, raw dogging it? Are we all not climbing a wall with no harnesses or supports right now? Alex Honnold, Netflix, read the room, you guys. We didn't need it. I didn't need to see windswept Alex Honnold climbing a wall to reveal anime abs when we're fighting fascism right now. This 2006 feet belongs there. We're dealing with real things. I don't want to see you climbing a wall right now, Alex. Okay. Get off the building, Alex. Get off the building. Okay. I want to read this very serious thing. So again, I was thinking about the fact that they were both 37. I was thinking about the fact that both Renee Good and Alex Pretti were both 37 years old when ICE killed them. It made me think, too, of the fact, because we've been talking about Minneapolis and why it's been a target, but there was something I wanted to say succinctly to you that I don't believe I've said as clear. Obviously, the history, right? We obviously, and the demographic, but then think why, right? And we know that police brutality has been a thing. When you go back to Jamar Clark, Philando Castile, George Floyd. They have Ilhan Omar, they have Tim Walz, but most importantly, of course, again, the density, how accessible it is, but it's a functional and functioning welfare state. And do you know what's so funny? I found when I thought that this knee-jerk reaction to defend it, not welfare. I mean, they have SNAP and they have Medicaid. No, it is a functional state that better captures what quality of life could be for America. And for that alone, it is a threat to this administration and really to the GOP as a whole. At this stage, this is about accountability. And what I mean is, if you or anyone are still on some level supportive of this administration, I'm no longer pretending that you're a better person than you are. That's my job, by the way, to see what you could be. With those folks, I need to see who you are. And we need to see who people are in this moment, plant the seeds, and move on. That's going to become very important later in this episode when I go off on this rant. But before then, it's always so important to remind ourselves and each other that these aren't just names that we say to prove our political position. These are people. And the only real justice in life is life. And then, of course, quality of life. And if we can't honor that, then I don't know what we're fighting for. And how many people, regular people, everyday people have been moved to action will never, ever. I can't feel despair. You know that people in that regard have never let me down. Granted, it's not as many people as we want it to be, but it's only ever taken a small group of people to enact change, a small dedicated few. To be honest, that's what the right has done. It's not the world. It's not even America. It's a small dedicated few that we used to marginalize, that are pariahs in actual society, but found a space and a way to gain power and money because of how these social media platforms have been geared to work. Exactly because of the accelerationist theory that we talked about, which isn't things are moving faster and worse. And that's no. It is a very specific political ideology. That is where billionaires and big tech and white nationalists and supremacists meet. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go ahead and check the last episode and good luck. And then it went off. But now I want to read this. I pulled this from a Facebook post. This is from Alex Pretti's final nursing student. He was my friend and my nursing mentor. For the past 4 months, I stood shoulder to shoulder with him during my capstone preceptorship at the Minneapolis VA hospital. There, he trained me to care for the sickest of the sick as an ICU nurse. He taught me how to care for arterial and central lines, the intricacies of managing multiple IVs filled with life-saving solutions, and how to watch over every heartbeat, every breath, and every flicker of life, ready to act the moment they wavered, techniques intended to heal. Alex carried patience and compassion and calm as a steady light within him. Even at the very end, that light was there. I recognized his familiar stillness and signature calm composure shining through during those unbearable final moments captured on camera. It does not surprise me that his final words were, "Are you okay?" Caring for people was at the core of who he was. He was incapable of causing harm. He lived a life of healing, and he lived it well. Alex believed strongly in the Second Amendment and in the rights rooted in our Constitution and its amendments. He spoke out for justice and peace wherever he could, not only out of obligation, but out of a belief that we were more connected than divided, and that communication would bring us together. I want his family to know his legacy lives on. I'm just pausing for a moment here because what did the Trump administration do immediately when a man was murdered in cold blood, plain as day for us all to see, similar to Renee Good? They entered a smear campaign. They propaganda, like you know what? That's not even the right word. Smear campaign is the only thing. Imagine what that does to someone's family. Imagine how it feels to people who know him while you're mourning an unbelievably unjust death, completely avoidable, to then watch this person that you know, this person that you love get smeared. The only time I've really seen that happen is with Black teenagers at the same scale. Think about Trayvon Martin. Think about Mike Brown, right? And what happens? What happens is that you have some people that debate the legality, and then you have other people debate the morality. And what I'm realizing is we need to have an intolerance for those who engage in the legalities of it if they can't address the morality of it. Because that's you half-stepping what you actually believe. Or maybe you don't, but either way, you're not saying it, and therefore you can never be held accountable. So we need to start asking people, and this is really what this episode down the line is about. Oh, what do you mean by that? What do you mean when you say that? Because what's happening is, this administration and these monsters who somehow, unbelievably, right? You all have managed to really rupture. You've ruptured their impenetrable wall of fascism. They've been forced to respond, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. Because fascism isn't accountable to a single thing, but what we need to start targeting more effectively are the enablers. And those people are surrounding us. You need to have an intolerance for this. And you know how I feel it always starts at home, but let me get back to the statement. I want his family to know his legacy lives on. I am a better nurse because of the wisdom and skills he instilled in me. I carry his light with me into every room, letting it guide and steady my hands as I heal and care for those in need. Please honor my friend by standing up for peace, preferably with a cup of black coffee in hand and a couple of pieces of candy in your pocket, just as he would. Honestly, I can't knock the candy. I can't knock the candy. That bag of Skittles had me yapping to y'all all day last week. Back to the statement. He would remind you that caring for others is hard work, and we must do whatever it takes to get through the long shifts. Step outside with your dog, breathe in the world, hike or bike, as he loved to do, and let yourself find peace in the quiet moments with nature. Stand up for justice and speak with those whose views are different from your own. I'm going to pivot out of the statement. I'm going to talk about who we need to be talking to and who we don't. Hold your beliefs with strength, but always extend love outward, even in the face of adversity. Take one step, no matter how small, to help heal our world. Through these acts, carry his light forward in his name. Let his legacy continue to heal. So those were some words that Alex Pretti's final nursing student wrote, who knew him, who was mentored by him, and who spoke really beautifully and eloquently about the larger work. And it's not a coincidence that these folks are champions. You know, that it's the folks who are on some level in our own quiet ways doing good. You know, it's really easy to keep doing it. We just got to do a little more. Watch how it transforms your life. Because the work that gives us fulfillment is service work. And there's a million ways that we can do it. But anyway, I'm aware, of course, that TikTok is now owned by Larry Ellison, thanks to Trump and some loser Democrats. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because, again, because of accelerationism, I can't tell you where we're headed just yet. I can tell you that, yes, ICE posts were throttled. I can tell you that folks have, been demonetized. I think it's too soon to know if that's going to stay the case. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. That's the nature of accelerationism, is making sure that we're not constantly in a reactive state to every single thing that's happening. I just smacked the ferns, or whatever this is. And to be measured and to watch and wait. But outrage? Oh yeah, hell yeah, bring that, give that. What's more important to me at this moment, and again, I know a lot of folks are deeply concerned and not sure what's going to happen for them. And again, it's too early to tell, but I do know that there are folks who are, if any of them are you, where you're just like, this was somewhere I made money. I have been listening to content creators who tell other content creators how to monetize, and they've been saying to go back to Facebook. And I just know what that's got to, for those of us who live through it, I just know what that's, remember when it was the shit? And then it wasn't, but that's what they do. If you think about it, it's happened every election cycle. It's happened every election cycle for the past, several. But anyway, what is as consequential, if not more, is what else Larry Ellison owns. CBS. Well, how's that been going? Barry, what a skin tag. What a skin tag of a human being. I've never seen somebody fail worse. Like, imagine giving the keys to the kingdom for nothing. And you have the personality of a brown turtleneck. And you just fumbled the bag so bad? Yeah. And you're a lesbian? Oh boy. I thought we were all kind of cool. You know, I thought all the queers, but I was wrong. He owns CBS, MTV, the Free Press, BET, CMT, Simon & Schuster, Nickelodeon, Paramount Plus, Pluto TV, and there's a bunch more. A bunch more. But I'm going to continue to watch out for what happens with TikTok, because obviously they said it was a power outage at a data center, but I think that's bullshit. We'll see. We'll talk more about this, but I want to jump into ICE. It's really important, okay? Really, really important. From the moment that they supercharged the ICE budget, because remember, ICE came about post 9/11, weren't that impactful, did not have much of a presence in the lives of Americans or even in the immigration system. It was pretty small. And then they got supercharged in 2018. And again, now, what the New York Times and everybody else is reporting on is very clear. It's very clear. This was the only way that ICE could function. The number that this administration set, as in the number that the Trump administration set for how many arrests needed to happen per day, there aren't enough migrants. There aren't enough immigrants in this country to satisfy that, because so much of what they're talking about is smoke and mirrors. It's bullshit. It's even at the border, it's a manufactured crisis. And again, stop causing destabilization everywhere else in the world if you're that serious about it. But we're not going to do that, are we? Right? The Democrats have been useless about this for years in terms about, you know, this manufactured crisis, because none of them wanted to deal with it because it wasn't popular. And they care about that because they've been losers a lot of the time. But that's because we've been losing a lot of the time. So then ICE gets supercharged. Billions of dollars get allocated to them. We have a great episode somewhere last week or the week before on ICE where we know that they're the number. Like, there is no law enforcement agency in America that is paid more than ICE. They are inept. They're Craigslist weirdos. And they've just been sweeping everybody up. But by design, they needed to go after those who had protected refugee status. They simply cannot make the numbers that they're required to make. So they manufacture a crisis. And since the moment that they've done that, this administration has been dogged and fascistic and authoritarian in the most playbook sense of denying what we see with our own eyes, of telling us that we're crazy, of calling innocent people rapists and murderers and criminals, right? And oh God, the way that they've been using is to incite hatred against leftists, the way that they've used it to incite racism and xenophobia. I want you to think about how extraordinary your work, the work of those people in Minneapolis, how extraordinary and effective your efforts were, that even this disgusting, evil, rapacious administration has to walk back their position. This is one of the first times, if not the first time, that this administration, this time, right? Not Trump's first time, this time has been forced to walk back their extremist position. Not enough to muzzle that goblin face fucking freak, Stephen Miller, but enough that some heads were rolling. And this is why, right? When Alex Pretti was shot in cold blood multiple times after they already had him on the ground, several of these, they're not officers, right? They're not officers of anything. But several of these Nazi freaks Again, if you can only do your job by hiding who you are, you're no different than the KKK to me. They had better outfits. You know, they sewed them themselves anyway. So what's happening right now? Well, Gregory fucking Bovino, the so-called commander at large. Guess who got fucking fired? He's going back to his own little posts where nobody cares who he is or knows what he is. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you don't know who I'm talking about. He's the guy who came out and did the press conference over the weekend. Corey, will you remind people who Gregory Bovino is again, please?
When politicians, community leaders, and some journalists engage in that heated rhetoric we keep talking about, when they make the choice to vilify law enforcement, calling law enforcement names like Gestapo or using the term kidnapping.
He couldn't say
that is
he couldn't
made.
say he couldn't say the words right.
That come from those choices. And then when you choose,
can we just pause? Just pause. We don't need to hear this. Just look at this. Is this not a lesbian? Is this not a lesbian in Nazi regalia? Like, how are you telling me that this is not Leslie Feinberg's evil doppelganger? Like, this is Stone Butch Blues if it in Nazi form. And by the way, if you ever want to figure out how to be a better person, Leslie Feinberg is it. Leslie Feinberg is it. But this is a Nazi grandmother lesbian. I've never been so certain that this is either this, like, look at what? Look at where you're you know, they fire the women first. They go after the women first. They went after Marjorie Taylor Greene. They went after this freak. Remove him. I'm done with this little Nazi. He was even wearing a trench coat. Understand your silhouette. Ew. Anyway, there was unilateral condemnation of this. We're talking about from the NRA to the NBA, right? The NBA is coming out making posts. A game was postponed. The Timberwolves make a comment about it, right? So we got the NRA to the NBA. You've got the New York Times to TMZ, not the New York Post. Of course. Never been so excited. Every time I have to read one of their stupid shit articles and I get to press click to not support us, I hit it so many times. I hit it the way that most men don't know how to pleasure a woman. I just fucking hit it. They don't know. They don't know how to push the button right. That's me on it. I'm like, more times. Sometimes I'll pull up articles just so that I can say I don't support you. There has been outright condemnation. Everyone says this has gone too far. Most importantly, right? The Democrats smelling blood in the water. And this is the thing. You will never hear me for a moment deny the toothlessness of most Dems. Shut up, Hakeem. But that is for the rot of the establishment Dems. There are too many times where when we make these blanket statements, where it's not directed in the right way. Because as I've mentioned, the reps are fantastic. The vast majority of them need to specifically name who the rot is. They need to be afraid of us. Their stakeholders are the people who are paying for their campaign runs too often, right? And that's because we don't have caps on political spending. Well, guess what will happen when we get in fucking power? Why can't we? Why shouldn't we shore ourselves up for a 2028 AOC run? Why shouldn't we do that? She's pulling at 11% right now. Newsom is 35%. And every time I see that pretty faced white man get in front of somebody else, like a Ben Shapiro, that fucking weirdo hobbit, He just annoys the shit out of me. Gavin Newsom is whoever he needs to be in whatever room he's in. We don't need that type of leadership again. I like the way that he comes hard at Trump, but I've seen the way he's governed here. There's some work that could be done. Is he better? Of course. But what I do know is we don't tend to fight under better conditions. I wish we did. We should want to. Then we would have, made more of an effort for Kamala. But you won't hear me contest that. That campaign was doomed to fail as far as I'm concerned. But more importantly, should we not fight for the vision of America that we want to live in? Shouldn't we try? Isn't it worth it? It is to me. I'm tired of the lesser evil, aren't you? But that would mean us taking some accountability for this time that we're in. And not accountability like these things happen because of us. It's what could happen. What do we do with what we know? Okay. So the Democrats smelling blood in the water because of us, because of you and your and your fantastic work and your doggedness. Well, they're now calling for Kristi Noem's resignation. That's another woman that could get out. And honestly, you couldn't do it fast enough. I'm so sick and tired of looking at that bad cosmetic work. I don't want to see her. I don't want to see that anymore. I don't want to see any of them. They're so gross. Everybody there is so odious and gross to me. But Noem in particular runs outside and starts spreading her little lies. And she does that. So, okay. But I need us to talk about this. Okay? Because they're going to usher potentially Kristi Noem out. By the way, they've already said that the DHS has come out and said they're scaling back some of the numbers in Minneapolis. The nicest people in America chased the Nazis out. Well done. This is a peace offering, right? After the shooting backlash. But we need to make sure that this isn't simply backlash. If we smell blood in the water, we need to go for the kill. That's where we haven't been the most effective. So what we have to watch out for before I talk about this, because I actually want you to hear Rep. Kelly, who I had to look into because I'm just like, who is this? Who is potentially leading this charge? Is she up to the task? And as soon as I saw her, I knew she was. And as soon as I heard her, I felt safe. You'll know what I mean in a second. But this is what we have to watch out for. Right now, people are outraged. People are disgusted. This walk back and the potential firing. If Noem doesn't resign, the Dems are going to push for her impeachment. Great. Fantastic. What people are going to look for is, well, we held them accountable. They're done. No. We don't let up. This is not the time to let up. This has been one of our weaknesses, where the second that there's some give, we pull back. I used to do that in the ring. When I would get into the boxing ring in my earlier days, I won most of my fights. I think I lost like 2 fights out of 15. But for a time, I just fought just better than my opponents. And there was one time I clocked this bird. Man, her eyes rolled, got her with a nasty uppercut. I immediately pulled back. And I get into the corner and my coach reamed me out. He was like, what are you doing? You've got to go for the kill. End the fight. You need the killer instinct, because if you don't, she's going to kill you. That's what you're getting in the ring for. And I was like, what am I doing in the arena if I'm not here to fight? I'm not here to fight. What am I here for? We've got to fight to win. It's not simply when we fight, we win. That's true, but that's for our dignity. That's for us. We need to fight to win. And that's a very different strategy. That requires a different level of commitment. And it doesn't mean everybody has to. But look what happens when we all just do a little more. They are so scared of that. They're so scared of our a little more. Because when you put us together, we're unstoppable. We're like the rumbling in Attack on Titan. Except, not demonic. Well, they weren't demonic, actually. There was you know what? I'm not going to talk to us about the lore. So what's happening right now is the Dems have a majority. They want to call up for her impeachment. In the House, we have a supermajority on our side. It's certainly enough to bring it to the forefront. And if you keep the pressure up, I keep the pressure up. If we keep the pressure up, the Trump administration may concede this because they have no problem. The way that this administration just, they're like, a woman, get rid of her, get her out. And for some reason, they just keep going. And they just keep going and they get their bad work done to appease these guys. And then they're the first ones who get tossed out anytime. I don't understand why that's not obvious. But you know what? If you had self-respect, you wouldn't be over there in the first place. So let me just not. Ori, would you pull up our great rep who's spearheading this? And then I'll hit you with some of the facts. We don't need to watch the whole clip. I just want you to hear. I just want you to, because we were just talking about me, getting into the pugilism. This is a pugilist if I have ever heard one. I feel safe.
Before that, we're going to talk to Representative Robin Kelly, a Democrat of Illinois, and she joins us from Cannon. Good morning, Representative Kelly.
Good morning. How are you?
And thank you for joining us this morning. Last week, you introduced a bill that included articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. 100 House Democrats have signed on to it. Can you tell us why you made that move?
Well, I'm proud to say it'll be at least 102 today. So people are adding their names.
Can we just pause for a second? I knew it because when I saw her nose, I knew it because that's a Black people nose. I can't explain it. But I knew we were good because I saw her face and I was like, oh, we're good. Like she got her little bob going. Got a little bob, little side part. This is somebody who's serious about the business. Now, listen to the rhetoric that she uses. This is why I feel safe. I feel safe.
Made that move because she needs to be stopped. She's an incompetent leader. People are dying because of her leadership. She's
Correct.
Really having a reign of terror around many cities in our country.
And,
thank you. We're good. That's it. That's Chicago, baby. That's Illinois, baby. I feel safe. I feel good. So let me tell you right quick why this is so significant. It means that Bovino is not enough. They tried to throw some random little troll our way. I didn't even know who he was, really. I'm looking at Homan, right? That bastard. That's a target, right? I did the Nazi thing on purpose. That's a target. As far as I'm concerned, they just brought on Bovino to take a fall. Right? Dressed him up like a little foot soldier in Hitler's third. And then tossed them back. No. We want a proper head that will roll. I like when guys like Keith Ellison, you got an AG coming out saying, oh yeah, no, nobody's getting away with it, what they're doing. Nobody's getting away with it. Now, the alarming thing, of course, is that they're going to be, and when I say they, the administration, incredibly incentivized, make sure that there isn't another election because, I think you can imagine what's coming. But then I think about the fact that look what happened with Trump. We literally cannot allow racists and fascists to seize power ever again. Because no matter what, I can't bring back lives lost or how many generations have been destroyed because we allowed the worst people in the world to take power. This isn't, nobody wants, I'm not talking about the freaks who run because they have some sort of weird desire, but like sensible thinking, more fulfilled people, we don't tend to do that. We don't want to run. It's impossible. It's shit. It's whatever. And I'm like, we have to figure out how to change that. That's not everybody's job, but we have to figure out how to change it. But that's another episode for another time. This is important though. Because right now, So when these articles were presented for impeachment, they had about 140 co-sponsors, and that was Monday afternoon. So that's nearly 2/3 of the 213 voting members of the House Democratic caucus, right? Of course, AOC signed that. So these articles were actually introduced earlier this month because Kelly's a gangster, following Renee Good. But now all of these Democrats are moving on it. Renee Good's death wasn't enough. This is why you're correct when you say that they're fucking useless, but they're useless because, to be honest with you, they're going to do an act by the strength of our hand. Does that make sense? They're going to do an act by the strength of our hand. This is the time to keep pushing. This is the time to keep pushing. Okay. So that's the ICE update that I'm going to be, following up. This is now, we're in the rant stage. Okay. We're in the fucking rant stage. Get buckle in, babies, because I'm very upset. Let me put on a little lip gloss so I can feel the thing. And I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible because I kind of already ranted a bit. And I don't want too much. I don't want to put not too much on me. That's what I'm saying to you. I won't put too much on you. So Corey and I are very clear. Yes, the internet. I'm making sure all these materials are good because it's not just about yammering on the internet. But I knew that more people had post Johnny Depp, right? And their smear campaign against Amber Heard. Because what happened is that influencers and content creators realized that they could make money and shore up attention, which of course they're monetarily incentivized to do by weighing in on current events. Didn't matter if it was news, it didn't matter if it was pop culture, it was current events. And from then, that's what we've seen happen again and again and again and again. But I don't think I understood how bad it's gotten. So, because Corey had to explain it to me, because I get very antagonistic towards the world when I have people's thoughts in my head that shouldn't, I don't know you. Your thoughts should not be in my head. That's why I prefer reading. It's why I prefer expertise. But what I've seen over and over again, because I've been like, let me get a pulse, right? Really hard to get these days. But I said, let me go. So I'm on TikTok. I'm looking at reels on Instagram. I'm going, I'm seeing content, that's moving over to Twitter where I lurk because the smarter people are still there. Just got to go through a lot of racist Nazi bullshit, right? Do you know what I discovered? Everybody is talking like they know exactly what's happening and why. And I've never heard of them before. I've never read anything they've written because they've never written anything. I don't know anyone who knows them because nobody does. And they're all telling you that this is, and me, that this is why this is happening and this is why it's important and you need to whatever. And it wasn't one or two. Like, there was a very clear aesthetic going on. Like, it was going to be a black girl in a bonnet. It was going to be a white boy with a shag, right, in a hoodie so that he's accessible. And everybody else in between has to do an activity like wash dishes or, I don't know, dance in order to say something else, like walking down the street or something, right? So I got caught with one of these videos because this guy is telling me that he knows about an egg scandal, and I eat a lot of eggs. And he's talking about these pasture ones that I be eating. And I'm like, okay. He goes, if you eat these eggs, you need to. And I was like, you need to know what's going on. And I said, I do. I would like to know what's going on with the eggs that I'm eating. And there's a white boy with a shag. And he goes on and talks and talks and talks. And then there's a green screen with some random words highlighted. And then we get to the end, right? Because he's sensationalized this. He kept saying he's going to expose this thing. And I got to the end of the video. And then he goes, well, my point, anyway, all to say, they're still better than everybody else, but they're not as good as they say they are. And I was furious. Like, I'm still mad. Like, I was so fucking mad because it was a nothing burger. And so I brought my problem to Corey, and then Corey informed me that that's actually every video now from everyone. and all of them are political commentators all of a sudden. And, there's nothing wrong, right, with people wanting to share their thoughts. But that's not what they're being presented as. No one's talking about their feelings on the matter in any way that is as persistent as this is what is factual, and I'm revealing something that you don't know, and I'm coming from this place. And I thought, this is exactly what anti-vaxxers do. This is exactly what anti-vaxxers do. I can literally go up, right, and find anything, find the most hackneyed, outcasted doctor, I'm using heavy air quotes there, in the world, and do what RFK does. And then I can just highlight random words and present them as facts. No wonder there's a doom scrolling feeling happening, because that's all you're getting is just people saying the worst things in the most sensationalized way, largely Gen Z, right? And again, it makes sense because they have no actual infrastructure to tap into. The right destroyed that, and Democrats marched merrily along their way watching it happen. But I'm very concerned by this practice because, again, the right doesn't do anything on their own. They're very stupid. They don't come up with anything. They don't make anything. But what they do is present the worst parts of our society on steroids. But it's based off of what we do. So we had call-out culture, and then it got turned into cancel culture, right? But that was when society and everybody else catches on with our nonsense, which always starts from a good place. But then we let the worst actors. And by the way, my caveat, remember I said I want to make sure I'm not going too hard on the trans community. By the way, why don't you go ahead and check out what Sarah McBride's work has been doing? All those bills that everybody was so afraid of just got swept away because it wasn't really about trans people. But trans people really wanted it to be about trans people. But what I'm now going to say, though, is that the worst actors, we allowed the worst actors in the trans community to hijack the narrative. That is a much more balanced way, okay, to say what I want to say. But that's my note. That was my note I wanted to share to you because, I want to speak responsibly, even if I'm annoyed. But anyway, all of this points to the fact that even on the left and just common folk, we have become so disrespectful of expertise because we expect to be entertained. We demand entertainment. That the information has been presented in this way, this fast. I mentioned that I've been reading When We Cease to Understand the World. And I took a lot of notes because it opens up with Albert Einstein. This is a book very much about the development of theory and science that starts with Einstein's theory of relativity. But I learned things that I'd never known before. I learned about how, I want to make sure, because I had to write everything down because I had to look so many things up. But Schwarzschild, who I'd never heard of, right? I didn't know this person existed. Is the person, so Einstein comes up with the theory of relativity, but it was Schwarzschild, right? A Jewish man who lived in Germany that fought in the First World War for Germany, that sent a letter to Albert Einstein that was tattered and covered in mud. And because Schwarzschild had written that letter in the trenches, in the middle of a war, while his body was betraying him, right? Because he was exposed to mustard gas. And mustard gas activated a recessive gene that only impacts people of Jewish descent. So his body, he ended up with a kind of immune, I don't even know if that's the right term, reaction called pemphigus, where his body just broke out in sores that ate away at him. And so he was already experiencing some of those early signs, and somehow in the middle of the trenches, this genius, right? Because he was so respected. He was so respected. He had been a genius from when he was a child, but he had written on that note in the trenches an equation for the theory of relativity. And Einstein received that letter and was able to apply it. And and the stories go on, of course, Grothendieck and Mochisizu and, de Brugler. Like, I'm just learning about how collaborative this process had to be, must be. How much I don't know. The language of mathematics, the way that each person approached it, but mostly that the most conscientious of our scientists, these brilliant people, almost always feared what we would do with what they discovered. And it drove so many of them mad. Of course, Oppenheimer and Snyder are involved and named in this work. And I'm not quite done yet. But why is this called When We Cease to Understand the World? What Schwarzschild was terrified of was, and last week I caught myself because I almost went super homosexual and was just like, we're made, the universe, and we're made up of the same elements in the stars, and all of that is true. All of that is true, right? And I know you be feeling that way too, like when we're feeling real query in our spirits. But what terrified him in the application of the equation, right? Because of course you have to prove your expertise, was the end of light. Essentially, what he discovered was when you concentrate down, and you keep going down, right? He was able to figure out the human form in its most concentrated. He was able to calculate that. But the collapse of a star led to an unquantifiable, incomprehensible darkness, the end of light. Light is how we measure and understand and can, measure space, time, distance, and how we see, literally. The idea of this void terrified him. Because if that were true, and we were made up of the very same things, could that kind of darkness live within us? And if you concentrated something enough over and over and over and over and over again, like pain, for example, or like hate, could we become something so dark and hideous and incomprehensible too, that if it could happen there, could it not happen with us? And of course, we saw the Holocaust. And do you want to know something? He said that his deepest fear was that it was that this darkness would be experienced and would manifest in Germany first, as he was living through that war. And I look at this moment where we are in this place where we cease to understand the world. But let me right size our fear, because that feeling it's normal, it's human. But letting it take the reins and hijack you, that's what we have to fight back against. And the same way with anxiety, we have to talk back to it. What we're seeing is, look what happens when you have the deepest concentration of wealth, and it's concentrated again and again and again and again. And then we also have the concentration of hatred again and again and again and again. And we get the concentration of pain. We get a genocide. The concentration of wealth, right? Just the absolute worst people operating the worst way. But these moments also reveal the light, doesn't it? Bill Gates saying is giving away 99.9 or whatever % of his billions when he goes, right? Mackenzie Scott literally almost single-handedly keeping HBCUs alive. Every single person that is fighting out there in Minneapolis, who now we can say without a shadow of a doubt are risking their lives because they simply cannot stand it. For all the darkness that there is in this universe, there is also so much light. Our job right now is to find out what happens when we concentrate the light. We're too far spread out. But my God, when we come together, we could be the brightest sun. And that's what I want us to know. But what most moved me was that science can't exist without collaboration. It can't. That every single thing that is posited demands interrogation, proof, cooperation, and collaboration. Even though they're sometimes competing with each other, even though they're envious, that failure is simply a part of that process. And that somewhere along the line, right, not only did we start to create these, you know, I don't know, beliefs, patterns, maybe behaviors across the left where we started to say my truth and your truth. What the fuck was that? I've always hated that. Anytime somebody said that to me, I'm like, absolutely not. I reject it immediately because truths are conclusive. This is about your perception and how you feel about a thing. Why can't it be valid without needing it to be framed as truth? Because what we did was we constantly minimized objectivity for my personal subjectivity, what I believe to be true. How I feel about this is important. Who else? Who does that sound like, you guys? Racists? Bigots? Fascists? Somewhere, and I saw this across the left, and it made me very concerned, but I always believed that we would come out, you know, getting our shit together. But I guess not. There were too many people that are just, when, like, these scientists, they just want a science. And organizers just want to organize. They're not here to yammer on and on online. They're service workers. They're doing actual work in community. And somewhere along the line, we started to get so antagonistic towards expertise. But expertise was never the problem. It was the accessibility towards it. And they started to become as like, they couldn't exist, right? It was either accessibility or expertise. No, our job was to remove the obstacles towards expertise. And to be clear, I don't care how one achieves that expertise, but there's two things that you must have that are irrefutable: years and peers. If you can't demonstrate those two things, why the fuck am I listening to you? Why are we listening? Like, I need you to preserve your mental capacity to think for yourselves. Not enough of us are. I know. Can you imagine that a fucking one single egg video? Because I was watching and observing, but I had them on silent because, again, I don't like people's voices in my head. It drives me nuts that I don't know. But this is what bothers me. I would never in a million fucking years go out to Times Square, for example, and ask somebody what we have to do about the Democratic Party or what their problem is. That's the same thing. I don't know you. And I'm seeing the same people who believe that because they have feelings about a matter, that those things are true. There's a space for experience, by the way, but experience should not come at the expense of expertise. And then, unfortunately, when there are people who had the expertise, if they didn't have the right identity, well, fuck them. Well, we fucked ourselves. And it wasn't even satisfying. Right? So this is something that we actually have to remember. I'm thinking of Toni Morrison, right? What did she say? The love is only ever as good as the lover. The thoughts are only as good as the thinker. If it's not, I hit the mic with my face. If it's not collaborative, right? If you're not engaging in theory, if you've not read, why should I be listening to you? In fact, you're actually incentivized to go for the worst possible reach to keep my attention so that you can make money. And that's what we've normalized. And so I just want to be clear about something. Your sincerity is the only thing that is needed right now, not your presentation of this is exactly what's wrong with the Democratic Party. This is exactly why I can't stand white people. This is exactly why we shouldn't, this is exactly why, anytime some black person, no one's brave enough to say they don't want to listen to black people, but you don't. You don't. If we did, we'd be in a very different country. And I promise you, there's a great thing that's coming out this week on race that I'm going to be yapping about. But we really don't see how powerful we are when we create these cultural norms and how they spread. And because we allowed people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about to talk, so did the right, but they did it with more money. And they did it with more infrastructure, and they did it with more continuity. What are these people that we're listening to? What are their belief systems? And by the way, I'm not even saying that the majority of them are bad actors, but they're actors whose job it is to keep your attention. When Corey said that to me, I was like, fuck. So what I'm not going to say and what I don't care to do is like somehow everybody stop making content. No, I am saying go inward. What do you have to say? And not rhetoric, not this is what's wrong with them. What do you have to say? What happened to our mess? What happened to our feeling? It's why we responded to the death of Renee Good and Alex Pretti with rhetoric instead of humanity. Now, I'm not trying to say, again, that we were right over here on Dark Rook about sincerity being the antidote to fascism. But did y'all happen to see Ye's apology? It turns out that I might be onto something. Did you say Ye's apology? It's brilliantly written and it's sincere. It documents the fact that he experienced a traumatic brain injury in his car accident. If you ever heard Through the Wire, you know what he's talking about. And for the record, isn't it odd, right? Because this is a traumatic brain injury. Isn't that what Fetterman has? Isn't it interesting that they both went super hard right? Because mental illness often presents in a very consistent way, right? When it's unchecked, which is delusions of grandeur, certainty that you're correct, that people don't get it enough and your job is to enlighten them. I know because that was my mom at times, right? Brilliant, wonderful woman, marginalized. So her bigness, her ferocity kept her alive a lot of the years that she was on this planet. She kept herself alive by having such a strong will and a strong sense. But what happens when they have billions of dollars, like in the case of Kanye West, or that they're a state senator? Is he? Yeah. As in the case with Fetterman. Jesus, yeah. What does that say about all these people who it doesn't matter what they see online? They're here and they just racist and will support Trump no matter what he does. That's not a thinking person. So if you haven't read it, I would. He talks about how he hurt the Jewish community, what made him gravitate towards the most hateful symbols as he was struggling with a bipolar disorder. But why do you think now is the moment, right? Because we're living in the consequences of our actions and our inactions. This is when who we actually are, it will be revealed. This is when. And it's the sincerity, it's the mess, it's the lack of certainty, it's the care. That we're the heart. We're the heart. Corey, just to help illustrate this point, because I know Billie Eilish was like, celebrities need to talk, and I'm like, and then of course everyone's like, it's performative, like everything isn't online. But I found Meg Stalter, her video really compelling because, as you know, I'm a comic, and this is a girl that doesn't leave the bit. She's fucking hilarious. She don't leave the bit. Corey, can we pull up this video of her? And I want you to listen to the language that she's using and think about how dismissive many of us would have been based on how she identifies, based on how she said, we don't have to listen to the entire thing. I think it's a minute and something seconds, but it's really great. I'd love for you to hear it.
Hi, I am a gay Christian person, and I just thought it was really important to share something that I wrote today with you. I have never, ever been a Republican, but I have loved God and Jesus my whole entire life. If you are someone who identifies as a Christian but supports ICE or the president, I want you to remember that Jesus was executed for challenging the system. His life and teachings directly threatened the religious, economic, and political power structures of his time, and he was murdered. If you are a follower of Christ, I strongly urge you to follow what the Bible actually says. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. You can argue the context of any scripture, but you can't argue that God doesn't want us to love our neighbors, and our neighbors are being hunted and kidnapped and attacked daily. Our government is killing people, and they are lying to us. The God that I worship is extremely angry about what is going on. I fully believe that. I believe he's extremely angry at our government. They are murdering people in front of us. We cannot stop talking about this. We have to abolish ICE. I truly, truly believe that is exactly what Jesus would do.
At a different time, we would mock this. At a different time, we would dismiss it because we grew very dismissive of religion. And there was a vacuum, a void within us because it wasn't filled with spirituality. It wasn't filled with a belief system. And we weren't even committed enough to be atheists, right? So essentially, we were just a very nebulous set of randomly occurring beliefs, but just generally thought we were on the good side. I would like for us to change that. We need a concentration of light. That doesn't mean singularity. We're plural. Our plurality is what made us amazing. But my God, didn't we all start to say the same at a different point in time? Actually, no, don't even worry about that. What I want to say is this, right? Most of us would choose like the part of the identity that is the most political or the most rhetorical. You wouldn't identify as a gay Christian person. That's actually what we need. We don't need more people who don't know what they're talking about telling you what is happening. We need to demonstrate more sincerity, more humanity, more honesty. That we're just regular people who know that this isn't okay. And we're doing something about it. That's it. That video made me feel physically ill because not only because it wasted my time, and I fucking hate that, but because I could feel the brain rot. I could feel, and then the idea that would just keep going and going and going, and then you'd just be inundated with people telling you how bad things are. That's actually not the full story. But again, sincerity is our antidote. From here on in, and this is what I've learned, force accountability. Because I've had a lot of people try to debate me in life if they don't know who I am, which is totally okay. But I'm actually developing now an intolerance for people who present things to me as if they know exactly what they're talking about. And the question is, who have you read? And who are you studying with? If people can't answer those questions, you should not be listening to them. That's science, baby. You know, the way that I get folks who are passive aggressive to own their shit, because I've had people, particularly white folks, every white person I know has done this. It's very odd. And of course, the better ones stop. They hit you with this passive aggressive nonsense, which is just not part of the Black lexicon. I say, what did you mean by that? Oh, no, I just meant, no, I was just on my way out. Right. Because you don't want to own the thing. One thing I've noticed, and to go back to the beginning, and of course that does mean we're wrapping. What happens when the people who are debating the legality, right, and throwing away the morality of it with a murder, right? The ones who tried to say, well, Renee Good tried to move her car. First of all, when all of us end up saying the same thing, they changed their tune. They did the same thing with George Floyd. But when we stopped talking about George Floyd, they took back his name, or they tried to remake the whole situation because we took our we took our hands off the wheel. Right? Well, our hands were never on the wheels, to be honest. When they're debating that, ask them, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that? Or do you ask people what they mean? It is really funny how nobody wants to be accountable, and men in particular flee from it, right? And I know because those are my favorite, like, those are my niggas. I fucking love men. But they're trained to maneuver, so there's no accountability. So when you ask somebody, do you really believe that? it means that they have to own the thought versus just engaging with the thought. And to be clear, ask in earnest. Don't go for the gotcha, because again, we all got. And you know, that's essentially all I want to say. But if people are not studying under someone, and again, this isn't about formal education. You don't necessarily need that to engage in this stuff, but you do need some. You need years and peers. You need a belief system or a tradition that you are bound by. Again, I couldn't just say anything. I'd be getting calls from the nicest people in the world who you know as Black feminists who would be fucking taking my head off if I started talking crazy. That's important. Anyone right now who's telling you this is exactly why this is happening and are not citing other people's work, not a random screen grab. I can look up anything and find truth in it online. Preserve your peace and focus on sincerity over certainty right now. We don't need certainty. That's what fascism offers you. That's what it tells us. This is exactly why this happened. No. If it's not, listen, this shit is hard. Like, what did the student say? Alex Pretti student, and there's a reason why I'm not sharing that person's name for safety. Right? What did they say? It's the heart. Just doing good work. It's not about yammering on and on about what you know to be true. You don't need to be an expert to know when something is wrong. But at this stage, be very, very cognizant of how much content you consume from these random people who are telling you, because it makes you feel sick inside, because what a damning picture they show. There's 2 of these videos, but I'm only going to share one in the interest of time. Corey, will you pull up, please? Because I want to reference one person that I'm not going to bother. Her video is quite out there. But there was an older woman who was part of the MAGA cult that when Trump pardoned all the January 6th people, the insurrectionists, she refused. She refused to be pardoned because she wanted to be accountable, and she was sad for the hate that she put out into the world, right? And again, we're in a very feelings, not facts generation. How you feel about something, right? Well, that was everybody's logic around Palestine and everything else. I genuinely could not care how you feel in the interest of facts. It's the job, like, I will care about your feelings because I care about people. But when you are using anecdotal fallacies, right, that's no different than, for me, than orthodoxy over organizing. That's what racists use. That's how they feel about it. It doesn't matter how much data we put in front of them to say, actually, you keep voting against your own interests for this red herring, this phantom Black person that's stealing all your shit, right? And why do white people shut down when we talk about race? Well, A, our practice and how we talk about it, which is what I'm going to be talking about, is the problem. But B, because of how you feel. America is all about feelings. But we normalize that too. And they took it on steroids, and now they present these things as facts by tapping into people's feelings. If we're doing that too, we have a serious problem. So this woman changed her mind, and that's an amazing thing. And the reason why I believe in atonement, the reason why I believe in redemption, is because that is part of the Black radical tradition. So my personal feelings are inconsequential. I'm bound by something larger than myself. I'm committed to something larger than myself. You have to fill that void. Imagine the concentration of light. Imagine us. Imagine how brightly we would shine. With that, Corey, our final piece, this is a man who spent 35 years of his life preaching, shoring up hatred. And again, it is this moment, sincerity, where we learn who people really are. When you look outside and there is nothing but meaninglessness, it forces you to look inward, and that's where the light lives.
I'm making up for errors of my past. I spent
This is Reverend Rob Schneck.
years
Schenk,
religious right, doing a lot of damage, helping to deliver the entities that are now inflicting all of this suffering on so many people, and in the process contradicting in every possible way the message I thought I was promoting in those years, but in fact I was doing the opposite.
He helps build the religious right. And now he's in the clergy fighting ICE.
So now I have to do the work of repair. And it came too late. And I have what time I have, but I want to do that repair. And just being present here and being in solidarity with all these folks is part of that repair work in my own soul, but more importantly, in the external world where people have to live with the consequences of my decades of harm and injury. So I have to own that, and it's painful, but I have found the folks here more gracious than any of the so-called Christian leaders that I kept company with in those years that I thought of myself as being. These folks are showing more grace in accepting me and inviting me to walk with them than I would have ever extended to them 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. This is redemption. This is redemption. In the big picture and in my tiny little small personal picture.
You know, he's welcome here. Everyone is welcome here. Because no one with a shred of humanity can look out at what's happening and not feel what he felt. So to be clear, that also means that anyone that is refusing to do so is clear. I'm clear about where they stand. I don't work for them. I'm not interested in them, but I'm no longer pulling back my language in the interest of the greater good. What is the greater good is having the courage to name what it is, to own our errors. So no, I'm not just going to sit here and read Gen Z. I need to teach Gen Z how to read. All the data tells me that they can't by every metric. So it's not acceptable for me to sit back, right? In the same way that it's not acceptable for I'm accountable to us. I'm accountable to us. And we're accountable to each other. And that, honestly, that's what makes life worth living. What is art if it exists in a vacuum where no one can see it? What is science without these contributions? I didn't know that. I thought it was like, oh, the theory of relativity. Science scares me because once we get to physics, it's like once there's math involved, I'm gone. But I never knew how much it took just to make these things true, to prove them, that there's a level of diligence that we actually deserve. And that we deeply, deeply, urgently need. So the issue isn't the people making the stuff. I want to be clear about that. I just want to say that we have to set a precedent for sincerity instead of certainty, because anyone who is certain about anything right now is someone you should be very, very very wary of. Because to see what we've seen, to know about Keith Porter, to know about Renee Good, to know about Alex Pretti, should be to make you uncertain about everything. And that's good. Because there's only one thing we need to be certain of, just one, that is evil. That what we know is happening is just straight up fucking evil. That accumulation of wealth is evil. That's that concentration of darkness. So here's to our concentration of light. Corey, thank you for making us look good, sound good. Thank you to every single one of you who make this work worth doing. You know, it wouldn't be interesting without you. But also, you're my collaborators. I love you all very much. So, sincerity, bring your mess, bring your plurality. I want to know more about you. I don't need another person pointing to another graph, another poll. I'm okay if people whose job it is to study those things and talk about those things, I'm okay with listening to them and their peers. and their corrections. But be very mindful of how you're consuming content, because it will kill every creative atom within you. And I couldn't tell you, we need you now more than ever. So I love you all very much, and I can't wait. Next episode of Don't Love you.